Hi everyone, this is Korosh Erfani. Today is Saturday, November 22nd, 2025. We got a very interesting breaking news. Jair Bolsonaro, the former president of Brazil, has been arrested. As you can see, there are many news regarding that in all the outlets. And this one is from the Guardian. As you can see, Jair Bolsonaro arrested after tampering with ankle tag out of curiosity. So he wanted to see if he can get rid of this, ankle tag, or otherwise the name is, I think, ankle monitor. So he wanted to get rid of that, and of course, police arrested him. So this is a very interesting case because we know that there are some similarities between what he was doing in 2022 and even during his presidency with what is going on right now in the United States with Trump's presidency. And that's why these similarities make that we can be curious about how the Brazilian judiciary system is acting regarding him, because he has just been arrested. So there are several points that I would like to develop, and this time it shows these similarities between the judiciary system over there and the judiciary system in the United States, and you can see how it's important to have an independent judiciary institution. So first of all, we should know that in Brazil, judiciary acted against former president despite all his political actions and power. We should know that there are two institutions over there: Brazil's Supreme Federal Court, STF, and the other one is the Superior Electoral Court, TSE. And both of them in 2022, when Bolsonaro started to, make up the stories in order to put in question the result of the elections, which was his failure, and of course the victory of Lula da Silva, his competitor, these two institutions started to follow and to pursue exactly what it must be, which means investigations, prosecutions, and anything that was against Bolsonaro as it was necessary. Even though Bolsonaro was at that time still in command of a large political base, we should know he was leading a right-wing bloc in the country, and of course he had some followers within the army and the police, for example. But despite all of this, judiciary was politically independent, and that's why they started to treat the case as a normal judicial case and out of the political context. So this shows the institutional autonomy of the judiciary system over there from political actors. And point by point, we can think about the contrary, of such a situation in Brazil here in the United States, something opposite of that. The first one that we don't have, unfortunately, right now, that much autonomy for the judicial institution in the United States. The second, the decisions that had been done over there was based on constitutional authority. The court, the Supreme Court, didn't follow the political cycle, which is the case, unfortunately, here in the American Supreme Court, right? Over there, we can see that they didn't follow, for example, the electoral timing, right? Investigation started during and after, before, during, and after elections. Convictions and arrest happened independently of whether Bolsonaro's allies were at least at office or not. The court issued orders when Bolsonaro's supporters started to organizing, the mass demonstration like the January 6th here, something similar. Beside Despite all of these, courts continued its work, and we can see that it was a kind of, we can say, constitutional timeline. The court followed the constitutional timeline and not the political timeline as Bolsonaro and his supporters wanted. The third point, we can see that enforcement of different measures had been done. The house arrest, for example, uncle monitor, or preventive detention, which is the case for the 2 days arrest. All of them had been applied to the former president. There is no exception, which means that an equal application of precautionary measures for everyone, for any citizens. The authority of judicial orders over any individual without any exception. There is no exceptional case, as Trump is trying to institutionalize it, to establish and institutionalize it here. So there was a serious refusal to grant any political exceptions over there. And I think this means a real enforcement of the judiciary power over there in Brazil, and of course, preventing any possibility to bypass or ignore such orders, which is the case, unfortunately, here. That's very important, that an independent judiciary system is always trying to enforce and to reinforce compliance with law for everyone, right, with no exception. Another one was judiciary tried to protect itself against any political intimidation, because there was a lot of threat and what we can call intimidation by political system, political structure. For example, Bolsonaro repeatedly attacked the judge. This is what is happening here by Trump. He attacked the judge publicly, named them, accused the electoral system of fraud, and of course he mobilized his supporter in order to put pressure on the court. But despite all of this, we can see that the Supreme Federal Court in Brazil investigate everything, regarding the coup plotting mounted and designed by Bolsonaro. Any anti-democratic actions had been taken into account by STF, and also anything that was like misinformation that was targeting the democratic institution in Brazil were considered as wrongdoing and of course taken into consideration by the judiciary system. So this is signaling how independent, how confident effectively judiciary system is in Brazil, and how it can protect itself and democracy from the political bullies, right? This is what is happening exactly right now in the United States. The fifth case is very interesting, because we can see that this system, this necessary element of the system, any democratic system, which is called checks and balances, how it had been not only protected but realized, achieved in the case of Brazil. Electoral integrity, democratic order, separation of power, all of these in the case of Bolsonaro had been taken into account. And this is very important, because they didn't let the executive overriding judicial decisions. And again, we have this in the United States, unfortunately, right now. The legislature didn't try to shield, some allies of the president, for example, from judicial investigation, including the president himself, right? Judiciary investigated actually any crimes involving all branches, because there were a lot of allies of Bolsonaro here and there in the legislative, in the executive, to sabotage effectively the work of the judiciary. And we can see how the judicial institution in Brazil showed effectively that it can reinforce checks and balances, and it can express the democratic maturity of the Brazil's democracy. And this is something significant, and that's why I choose this title for this video, Brazil as a role model, for the United States. And we have to talk about international comparison of the case of the Brazil with other countries. In many countries, even for the case of Nicolas Sarkozy in France, for example, we can see that when it comes to the leaders, the former leaders who had done something fraudulent or illegal, we can see the case drag into decades. Sometimes several decades are necessary to just check one cases. We can see they are always waiting for the political change in order to find, a getaway if possible. They try to rely on external pressure. We remember that for the case of Bolsonaro, Trump directly intervened and tried to put pressure on Brazil. You see here, we have effectively the presidential action. That's a presidential, one of the executive order, according to which, because Brazil was prosecuting Bolsonaro, the United States started to impose a higher level of tariff on Brazil, and a lot of pressure personally by President Trump in order to get what? To get the release of Bolsonaro, fraudulent and someone who attempted the coup. Look at one of the Twitter of Trump. The way that Brazil has treated former President Bolsonaro, a highly respected leader throughout the world during his term, including by the United States, is an international disgrace. This is a letter that Trump wrote to President Lula da Silva saying that these trials should not be taking place. It is a witch hunt that should end immediately. So why? Of course, because this is a kind of alter ego of Trump. Bolsonaro is an alter ego of Trump. Trump sees himself, and his future in Bolsonaro and his fate, right? He knows that if he let the American judiciary system staying or remaining independent, there would be maybe such a similar fate for himself. So that's why he wants to dismantle that. Trump wants to dismantle completely the judiciary system here in order to, put in question seriously checks and balances and independence of judiciary system. So we should know that democracy has some foundations, but the most important of them is effectively the separation of powers, right? And the serious system of checks and balances. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any democracy. And that's why in the United States, right now, there is a trend, a serious organized design trend by Trump's administration in order to put effectively in question everything so that they can have a dependent judiciary system. Dependent means executive will overshadow, as it is doing right now for the legislative. Congress is just a bunch of people who are waiting to see what Trump is giving them as direction. I am talking about the Republican parties, the majority, but same thing is in the mind of President Trump for the judiciary system, how effectively he can dismantle completely the independence of judicial institutions in order to, call into question checks and balances so that he can decide about everything, but absolutely everything. And from that moment, we should say goodbye to, democracy. There wouldn't be any democracy without a serious judicial independence institution. So that's why I think the Brazil is giving not only to the United States but to France also and to the world a very good example of independence, of resilience, of seriousness regarding what should be done. And I think the role of the people, like this guy, let me show you one of the major figures of this story, because it was seriously involved. I am talking about the Alexander do Moraes. He is the guy who saved, we can say literally, he saved the Brazil's democracy, right? Because with his perseverance, with his resilience, and his compliance to the law and to the constitution, he showed effectively the way, right? And for the sake of democracy, he resisted to all he stand up, really. He stood up to all the threats, intimidation, and so on, so that democracy can be preserved in Brazil. And that's why a whole nation must be grateful regarding this person. But I am talking about this kind of person, not individually. I am talking about the institution that must be protected. And when you have in the Supreme Court in the United States, the justices who are, ignoring completely the constitutional aspect of what they are doing because they're bent toward Trump, because their fidelity, somehow loyalty to Trump. Of course, we should be seriously worried about the future of the independence of the judiciary system in the United States, and by extension, the future of the democracy in the United States. So that's why we have to follow it attentively. Thank you very much for watching this video.